Hey, it's your girl, Coach Kinsley. On today's show, I'm going to share with you about my knee injury, my road to recovery, and how you can learn from my mistakes.
Welcome to 15-Minute Fitness Fix with Coach Kinsley. I'm producer Mike, senior editor for the podcast, and a former client of Coach Kinsley's who benefited from every rep until I heard
3, 2, 1, let's go! Remember to always consult your physician before starting any nutrition or fitness regimen.
So, Coach, I was scheduled to run in a half marathon. I'd signed up for it right after I ran my turkey trot on Thanksgiving, thinking I was going to really improve my fitness. And, well, I haven't done that.
What?
So, I am going to downshift and run the 5K.
What? Oh my goodness.
My concern is that I think I can do it, maybe, probably not. I don't have enough miles on my legs, an experience that I had about 20 years ago when I ran one. And so I probably would have ended up probably hurting myself if I had followed through on the half marathon. So I'm going to sit this one out due to my fear of injury at my age. I know recovery time would take longer too.
Man, I'm still signed up for the half marathon. No, I relate to that. I actually got injured when I started training for it in January.
You injured?
I'm no superwoman.
Get out of here with that talk.
It was really surprising because I remember back in the day, I was hitting 2-a-days. 5 days a week. I'd do my resistance training in the morning and then I'd go back in the evening and hit some cardio.
So what happened? How did you get hurt?
So it was my knee that was giving me the most trouble, and it was my IT band specifically.
Your IT band. I've heard of those, but what are they exactly?
So it's this long tissue that runs from the outside of your hip down into the outside of your knee. And it does a few things. So it'll help lift your leg to the front and to the side. And it's going to support you during flexion and extension. So running is what got me the injury, but that wasn't just running alone. I overtrained. And so I wasn't just asking my IT band to do this extra running for me. I was also asking it to do the exact same amount of resistance training I had been. Running is really good for us. Don't be afraid of running out there.
I had an issue with overtraining when I started training with you. We were going 2 times a week, so I continued that, adding a couple extra days, and I was really trying to improve on what you had shown me. And I had found this overhead press machine. I thought, well, I can increase the weight a bit because it is a machine, and it kind of puts the weight in place for you. I pushed and I pushed and I pushed, and my arm hurt, but I hadn't finished all my sets yet. So I pushed and I pushed, and well, I hurt myself. So that was probably not the smartest thing. So is that straight overtraining, or is that straight me just being dumb?
Well, honestly, they can be the same thing.
Okay.
You're a little silly Billy for overtraining. You said your arm hurt, but you kept going. Like
Yep.
that's exactly what happened to me. I had done a 5K on Monday, and then on Tuesday I hit a heavy lift leg day, and then on Wednesday I hit another 5K, and it was about halfway through that run that I started to feel pain. And you shouldn't feel pain when you're working out. General rule of thumb. Now, it could be muscle fatigue, muscle soreness, but pain is different. And I kept going, like you kept going with your press. And that's what leads to injuries when you're not listening to your body. You got to take the L and go home.
Yeah, it was episode 4, flexibility, where we talked about injury and how that can keep you out the longest from your fitness routine. So, Coach, did you have anything prior that caused the injury to flare up?
My right side across the board is tighter than my left. And so I'm sure that affected my running strides on top of overtraining, on top of requiring more from my body and not giving it more, like adding more stretching. And that's why the injury was on this side.
So, then, Coach, how do you tell the difference between resting from overtraining or not doing anything to slowly working your way back in to your routines for the week?
I want to go back to sitting out. So you need to not just sit out. You need to be really intentional about your recovery. And that's going to get you a better idea of when it's time to go back. With my IT band injury, I wasn't able to even walk without a limp. It became pretty obvious once I could walk without a limp. Once I could do that little like speed walk without a limp. But in between that, I was doing the rice method.
Did you say rice method? RICE?
That's the one.
Okay. Can you enlighten a poor young man about what the rice method is?
Yes, so RICE. R is going to stand for rest, so like for sure, rest. And then you'll also want to ice. And this would be like right at the pain site. And that's going to help with your inflammation. And then compression, that is usually like some sort of band or brace, or KT tape is also helpful. And then the E is elevation. Recap: rice stands for rest, ice, compression, elevation. And that's a really, really good way to get to recovery. But of course, one day is not really going to be enough. You got to be consistent with it. Multiple days in a row.
So, with that recovery process, do you also change up what your nutrition balance is, your macronutrients?
That's a really good question. I still make sure that protein is priority, but I do cut down my grain intake a little bit. So that's going to be part of my carbohydrate intake, but I still keep my vegetables, and I barely eat fruit, but I'll keep those in my diet too. But it's just like I'm not burning as much, like I'm not requiring as much from my body when I'm resting. So those grains that I would be using for like fuel during my workouts aren't necessary.
Also important to hydrate, coach?
Oh, you know it. Hydrate or dihydrate.
Hashtag.
Hydrating is super duper important. And depending on how injured you are, there's other things you can do besides the rice method. So I really like doing Epsom salt baths, supplementing magnesium. It's necessary. You can take anti inflammatories. Like I mentioned, the ice is going to help to reduce your inflammation, but ibuprofen will as well.
So, coach, walk us through your recovery process and timeline. How did you recover?
I definitely use the rice method. And I'll be honest, I didn't use it super willingly. My boyfriend was very, very kind, very, very sweet. He made it his mission for me to ice my knee. Definitely for that first week. I'd even go as far as saying 2 weeks, making sure it was iced and elevated. We used KT tape. And then I was resting besides training my clients, which was difficult. Eventually, once I did feel like these methods were working pretty well, I could, get up to maybe a jog, I had better range of motion, I went and saw a physical therapist.
Did you get a compression sleeve for your leg or a brace of some sort? Or did you use something else?
I never used a brace. So I traded that out with KT tape, which is kinesiology tape, a thin, flexible tape that is going to aid that muscle movement similar to a sleeve or a brace. It's going to slightly like lift your skin so more blood flow will go underneath. And blood's going to heal your body, right? It's bringing oxygen and everything that you need to kind of also reduce that swelling and inflammation on top of the physical support it gives the joint. So that was my way of doing it. And why I went with a kinesiology tape instead of like a sleeve is that it's just really hard for me to find one that works for me. Most braces that are like over the counter just never fit properly. And so if it's not fitting properly, then it's not doing its job properly. You can definitely do KT tape wrong. So make sure that if you are going with that method, you find someone that knows how to do it, or YouTube, do your research, because it's only going to do its job if it's placed on there properly.
So, you're loaded up with your KT tape, you're ricing, resting and icing and compression and elevation with your very helpful boyfriend. So, how long was that process for you? And do you feel now, after taking care of that in that way, that you're back to your 100% unafraid self?
I wouldn't even say that I'm 100% right now. And that's where I decided to go to a physical therapist because it had been weeks of me being very intentional with my healing and with my recovery. I felt like I should be better. So I went to a physical therapist, and man, I was really scared. I was really scared that the physical therapist was going to tell me I needed to stop training people. I thought she was going to tell me that I'm not healing because I'm not giving my body the space to. But she took me through a lot of different stretches, and she had this like measurement instrument, being another like professional eye just gave me the confidence and support I needed to test my knee out. because I didn't really know if I was ready because I was scared to injure myself again. So I wasn't really taking many risks. I still have not done a 5K yet, but she had me do a pistol squat on my left side and then a pistol squat on my right side.
So, coach, for our listeners out there in Europe and Russia and in the United States here, hey, mom, and for myself as well, please explain what a pistol squat is.
So a pistol squat is where you're going to stand on one foot and you're extending the opposite leg in front of you pretty straight. That foot's off the ground. And then you'll go for a squat like you normally would just on that one leg. So you're bending your knee, hinging at the hip, and dropping down.
So, it's a pretty advanced squat. So, it should be able to tell you where you're at as far as your recovery goes because it sounds fairly difficult.
Yes, yes, it is a very advanced squat. Please do not try this if you have not already mastered the squat.
Oh, that's okay, coach. I don't have to worry about me giving that one a shot. I think I'll sit it out and just do regular squats.
Yeah, it is very advanced. So it's not just going to tell you like where your knee strength is at, but it's definitely going to give you some information in regards to your ankle stability and strength and even your ankle flexibility. It's very advanced, yeah. And I was confident that I can get down on my right side, but I wasn't confident I could get up, but I did. And I got the same distance on both sides. And I really think that a lot of times when you're coming out of an injury, it's very mental to get yourself back up and going and give your body the trust that you had before the injury to work it like you had, once it's recovered, because it needs to rebuild the strength. You're probably losing a little bit of muscle mass, especially if it's used to being trained so much harder.
So, this KT tape, this kinesiology tape, sounds pretty cool. Is that something that I could use for a regular workout or is it just for recovery?
Oh, no, it's super helpful while you're working out because it'll give you that support as you're doing the motion and that relief as well, especially if you're coming out of an injury or also if you feel, kind of an injury coming on. It's also a really good option. It's that same tape that you see a lot of like volleyball players and football players put on.
And that's American football for our European friends, for which the Kansas City Chiefs are the current world champions.
Good call.
So, coach, as you continue with physical therapy, are you doing it just to kind of keep a check on yourself, or are you learning more from it than just recovery?
Oh, I've learned a lot from it. Not only did she check my flexibility, but she took me through some exercises where she would provide manual resistance. And so she was able to figure out that I have weakened gluteus medius in both sides.
Now, coach, I know what gluteus maximus are, but what is a gluteus medius? And should I be shaping mine?
So your gluteus medius is going to be more on like the outside and upper part of your buttocks. So it's going to affect a lot of those like lateral motions, and also lower back pain can be a sign that you have a weak gluteus medius.
That seems about right because I go to a massage therapist every few weeks, and that is an area that I have the therapist work on a lot because it's tight and can be sore from leg day, from any number of things.
Like muscle tightness is a lot of times your body compensating for the lack of hip stability. Yeah, so some exercises that she had me doing was I would like lay on my side and then one leg at a time, I would tilt the heel towards the ceiling and do long leg reps like that. And she'd have me do reps and then she'd have me hold it and then pulse it out. And man, as someone who could, weight lift some pretty hefty weights, that was hard. I was very surprised at how hard that was. Like my leg was shaking by the time she had me holding it, and each of these was just 30 seconds.
Coach, that surprises me that you're struggling with that because I know from your Instagram and from training with you that you can throw your body weight around pretty well. So I guess we all have room for improvement, huh?
Yes, we all really do. The improvement is, of course, whole body. but really making sure that you're focusing on where your weakness is and your imbalances are is super duper helpful for preventing injury and just knowing where to focus for daily life, because all these muscles aren't just helping you, do a squat, but they can help you do things like get out of a car for the rest of your life, being able to step out like that, going up and down stairs, or even like, walk faster across the walkway when a car's coming.
Coach Kinsley with the 15-minute fitness fix with Coach Kinsley. Hit the highlights for us.
Today's highlights. First, listen to your body. It's constantly communicating with you, pushing yourself or pulling back. And be intentional about your recovery with things like the rice method and Epsom salt baths and KT tape. And then also be intentional about your recovery, and be intentional if you are going through an injury, if you're coming out of an injury, but you can also be intentional with your prevention. Ice is always a good idea. Ice is your best friend.
Oh, Coach, I thought you were going to be my best friend, but I guess I'll settle for ice.
Me too. Solid. Thank you so much for joining us today on 15-Minute Fitness Fix with Coach Kinsley. The fun doesn't need to stop here. Email me at coach@coachkinsley.com. You can check out my webpage, coachkinsley.com, and also find me on Instagram at, you guessed it, Coach Kinsley. Your girl. See you next week. Boom.